Welcome back to Game of Pros, Fantasy Football, and Bets. Hope you tuned in to Week 1's tips. You'd be glad if you did. Way more green checks than the thumb down emojis. That's what you want to see. If you bet on my picks last week, you had a 63% winning percentage. Would have been close to 70 if it wasn't for that Monday night fiasco. I don't know what happened to the Ravens there, but I'll take 63% any week, especially Week 1, where there were so many unknowns and really just a lot of close matchups. Fantasy-wise, I am happy to report I had a lot of hits. Told you to start Brandon Cooks, Devonte Smith, Jamar Chase. I told you Paris Campbell was a sleeper for me. That wasn't the guy, but I'll take a little bit of credit for that because Zach Pascal did end up going off. I knew there was somebody in that offense, not named Michael Pittman, that was going to have a heck of a day. Deebo Samuel was the start. Shout out to my man Quintez Cephas, caught his first touchdown of the year. Also had a couple sits that went my way with Justin Herbert, whatever he had, like 13 fantasy points. Julio Jones is a sit for me every single week, but also had some misses. Not sure what the heck happened with Brandon Ayuk, any of the Falcons, any of the Packers. Also told you to sit Gronk, who only got like a 40% starting percentage in ESPN leagues. That number will surely go up. But overall, a solid Week 1. Don't forget to shoot us a message on our Twitter or Instagram page posted below for any starter sit situation or if you'd like some betting advice. Jumping right into Thursday Night Football. Over-under is 41. That to me is pretty low. It's as low as it gets. I think Vegas odds are not liking the Taylor Heineke factor, but I don't see that much of a drop off. I'm taking the over here. I'm also taking the Giants to cover and Giants money line. I know they are the underdogs, but Thursday Night Football, I don't like Washington in prime time. Daniel Jones is a completely different quarterback on the road, and 22 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. He's also 4-0 against Washington with a 100 QB rating. Pretty hard to believe. Actually, no, it's not that hard to believe. But so yeah, give me the Giants here. I don't see a high scoring game, but that's just too low for me not to take the over. Fantasy wise, no surprises. Ingram is questionable, I think, for the game. Either way, I think you could find yourself another tight end to start. I can see an argument for starting the Giants D, but definitely go Washington's D, just in the chance that they put on an absolute show. Washington has to give more than 7 combined targets to McLaurin and Logan Thomas. I mean, what is that offense coordinator thinking last week? No surprises on Washington starter sit either.
Yeah, looking at this game, you'd normally go the under between New York and Washington on a Thursday night. 41 is just crazy low. I'm actually with you on the Giants on this one. Washington, as you and I know, as fans, is just terrible in prime time. I think that they're going to disappoint once again. And then, plus 176 is just too tempting for the Giants, who I think have a better than solid shot at winning this game.
Yeah, I saw what I saw from the Giants and Broncos games. Extremely impressed with the receivers and the connection they had. Jones with Galladay, Shepard, even Slayton. I don't see Washington really be able to stop that. Jags, Broncos. To me, it's easy money line here to take the Broncos, but be careful with the spread. 6-point favorite there is difficult. I think the Jags will come out stronger. It's their first home game. Urban Meyer hopefully gets his stuff together. I'll take the Jags to cover. Broncos losing Judy and Ronald Darby is tough, but I think they'll do enough to get the W. I think this one could have a lot of offense and maybe even a defensive touchdown by the Broncos. Lawrence looked a little confused on offense on a couple of those picks. And give me the over. And fantasy-wise, start all your Broncos, everybody. Even Javonte Williams, I think, could get some garbage time stuff. Broncos defense for sure. KJ Hamler is going to be filling in for Judy a lot in the slot. Tim Patrick is a stud. Sutton could get a touchdown. And we saw what Melvin Gordon did. Even Bridgewater. I mean, I think the Jags, once again this year, is just that team that you're going to start everybody against. With the Jags, in deeper leagues, you probably want to, keep an eye on considering starting any of their wide receivers, but you you have to I think bench James Robinson and Carlos Hyde. You don't know what they're going to do. You have 5 rushes for James Robinson this last week. You'd hope that he gets a little bit more, but I think it's just a tough matchup with the Broncos.
I think it's going to be tough to get production out of all of those guys that we have. I think that there's a good chance that they'll all be decent flexes or something like that. I may, as low as the over under is, I might actually even just take the under. I like Lawrence, but he's got some, he's got a learning curve, and this could be one of those games where Broncos end up winning 25-6 or something like that.
This matchup is the toughest one of the week for me. I had a really hard time figuring out what my bets were going to be. Bills offense looked flat at home, I think, and now they go to Miami to play a team coming off a big win in Foxborough. Miami's offense didn't overwhelm, but I liked how guys like Gaskins, Waddle, and Parker looked. I'm going to go with the upset win here by Miami and to cover, and I'll take the under. I think both games last year went over by quite a bit, but I see a little bit of a defensive showdown in this one. I know I feel like I'm getting a little cocky now with my picks, but fantasy-wise, don't give up on Gesicki yet. Start Waddle. Consider Devonte Parker in deeper leagues. He looked to have a really good connection with Tua, a lot of slant routes, and I think they could build on that. I think there's a big play coming soon for him. Bills, Emmanuel Sanders was on the field a lot, but I still don't know if he's start worthy. Diggs and Beasley will command more targets, and they'll want to fix some of the errors from this last weekend. Singletary is a sit for me this week. Unless you're in like 12, 14-man league and need a flex, I would stay away from Singletary. A little bit surprising to see that Zach Moss was a healthy scratch. I'm probably going to stay away from both defenses. But if you own the Bills D, I think they're good for a few sacks and maybe a pick off to
Yeah, only thing I think I might actually start Singletary in this game. He was 11 for 72 last week, and you looked at what New England did against the Dolphins. Damian Harris had 23 rushes for 100 yards. That's the best running performance that I've seen out of the Patriots in a while. I think that if it is a defensive showdown, then they're going to be running the ball quite a lot. So I might actually slot Singletary in as a flex.
I like that. Texans at Browns, over under 48. I've got them going under. I think the Texans will cover. It's a 12.5-point spread. That's pretty crazy. You're saying the Browns are going to win by 2 touchdowns. I think that's tough, and you have to, consider what the Texans did this last week. But I don't know. I'll believe a little bit in the Texans' performance. So I'll take Texans to cover, but Browns money line and the under. I can see Texans, being a little gritty defensively, and maybe Baker needing like a late drive to win the game. Fantasy wise, I think Mark Ingram is a solid flex play, even like RB2 or 3. Amendola in deeper leagues. I'm not, sitting here telling you Amendola should be your wide receiver 2, but I think in deeper leagues you could consider him. He looked really good. Brandon Cooks was sensational. You got to keep plugging him in. For the Browns, only hesitation would be Baker for me. It doesn't quite crack that top 12 QB. And OBJ, even if he's active, I'm not sure I'm starting him. He'll probably be, 4th, 5th option in that offense for at least a little while. If you own the Browns D, plug and play, could be a solid outing for them.
Yeah, I think this is one of 3 games where the spread is in double digits, and those kind of games always make me nervous. I remember a few years ago watching the Patriots Jags. Patriots were favored by, it was something crazy like 15.5 or something like that. They ended up winning by, I think, 2. These double digit spreads always kind of freak me out. I'd go Browns money line, but I would take Texans to cover for sure.
I think that's the covering for Houston is a good one. Bengals at Bears. I'm going to be really excited to watch this one. Andy Dalton goes back against his old team in this Midwest battle. The Bears are favored by 3, and I think I like this game as an upset for the Bengals. Another week of Burrow and friends getting rhythm. We'll have, I think, them starting 2-0 for the year. Give me the Bengals to win by more than a field goal, and I'll take the over. I feel like this game could kind of have a back and forth, type of offensive game. Fantasy wise, Boyd continues to be my odd man out in the offense. Deeper leagues, I think he's a fine flex play. Just too many mouths to feed with how good Joe Mixon looked. And I just think you can't bench Jamar Chase under any circumstances. I think he's going to continue to shine. And no surprises for the Bears, really. Don't get too cute. You're starting Robinson, you're starting Montgomery. And until it's like just time for Justin Fields to go out there and really shine. And there's really no one else on that team that I think you could consider. Some people are thinking maybe the Bears defense, but I don't know. I believe another week with Burrow at the helm for Cincinnati is it's just going to keep showing that they've got just so many weapons on that offense. 49ers and Eagles. The over is at 50. I think odds makers are, saw what these teams did in week one, and they, 50 is kind of big. I'm taking the over, but it's a tough one to call. I'll go 49ers money line and Eagles to cover. Niners are basically a field goal favorite as the away team. They lost a couple solid pieces this week to injury already, and Eagles should keep this game interesting. Hurts looked really good in week one. Really excited to watch, this game really. This could be a high scoring affair. I'm taking the over, like I said, but I'm cautiously optimistic about it because 50 is pretty high. Fantasy wise, I have absolutely no clue what they're going to do at running back. It could be Mitchell, it could be Hasty, it could be Sermon, it could be newly signed practice squad guy, Kerryon Johnson. Like anybody would be lying if they told you who's going to get the volume there. It's gun to my head. I guess you have to stick with Mitchell after the performance this past weekend. I lost most of this week, so believe me, the whole situation can kick rocks. But no question for me, you keep starting Debo, Ayuk. And for the Eagles, I really like how that offense looked. I think it's time to consider Miles Sanders as a must start again. Even Rager was a decent flex option, and Gainwell, I've got my eyes on him. If you haven't heard this before, start Devonte Smith. 31% start percentage in ESPN leagues. That's ridiculous. You have to start Devonte Smith. Saints at Panthers. Panthers home again. This is the trifecta matchup for me. I've got the Saints to win by more than 3, and the over. Man, they looked great against the Packers, and the Panthers really only squeezed by the Jets. So Sean Payton's Saints are also 7-1 against Carolina since 2017. This will be Sam Darnold's first career matchup against the Saints, and I don't think it'll be pretty. Fantasy-wise, Kamara and CFC should put on an absolute show. I'm not ready to start Jameis Winston just yet, especially not against a pretty good Panthers defense. But I think you could continue to consider Callaway. I know he didn't do much week one, but I think he's still kind of their most explosive weapon there. Start your usual Panthers, and I think the Saints defense is a juicy pickup as well.
Only thing I disagree with is Troutman. I was pretty high on him to start the year. And although he didn't do a ton this past week, he did lead the team in targets with 6, even more so than Kamara. Juwan Johnson scored those 2 touchdowns, but I'm pretty optimistic on Troutman going forward.
Rams at Colts, 47.5 over under. Rams going into Indy, a second home game for the Colts. They can't start the year 0-2, right? So there is a lot of pressure for Wentz, and there was a lot of pressure on him by the Seahawks defense. I don't think it's going to be very pretty against the Rams pass rushers. Plus, Russell Wilson was launching touchdowns against the Colts too. I think Stafford could have a big day. This is why I'm taking the over. I think it's a high-scoring game. I think the Colts will have a lot of garbage time points. So I'll take the Rams to win and cover. And the over. Fantasy-wise, no real surprises for LA. For Indy, they'll need big games from Taylor and Hines if they want to compete. And why not give Zach Pascal another shot? Rostered in only 3% of leagues. Go get him.
We have Raiders against Steelers. Over-unders at 49.5. I'm going to go under on that. I think that this could be one of those ugly kind of AFC East games. It's in Pittsburgh. I could see this one kind of being a defensive battle, but I am going Steelers money line on this one. Although the Raiders, beat the Ravens last night, I just don't see it happening this time. So far as fantasy, Josh Jacobs looked pretty good. Devin Singletary against the Steelers last week actually went 11 for 72. Kenyon Drake only had 6 carries to Josh Jacobs' 10. So I'm staying away from him for now. Darren Waller had an outrageous 19 targets. I'm not expecting that to happen every week, but I do think that he's going to continue to see the lion's share of the targets in that offense. And then Hunter Renfro actually looked pretty good so far as the receivers. I like Renfro for his 9 targets last week. Definitely staying away from Ruggs for the time being. So on the Steelers side, we have Deontay Johnson, who got 10 targets, even being hurt for, I think, a series or so. Juju Smith-Schuster had 8 targets. Najee Harris, I think, will do pretty well against the Raiders. Tyson Williams shredded the Raiders on Monday Night Football. And then Chase Claypool always has that home run ability, so I am sticking with him.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about when it comes to like betting against the Raiders after Monday night. I guess you have to think of it as like an anomaly. It was a big home game, for them opening up Vegas, their new stadium. So I think it's a little bit safer for to go, Steelers money line and for them to cover. And with the Raiders now traveling across the country to Pittsburgh.
Next up, we have Patriots at Jets. Over-under is 42.5. That's pretty tempting to go the over on that. But Patriots, Dolphins last week went to, I think it was 16-17. Jets played the Panthers. It was like 17-14 or 19-14. So I'm just going to stay away from that altogether. I'll go 100 chips on the Pats money line. Spreads at -5.5 for the Patriots. This could be a closer game than that. So I'm just going to stick with the money line. Fantasy-wise, Jacoby Myers led the team with 9 targets. Damian Harris got a heavy workload, 23 carries for 100 yards. I think that's going to continue as long as Mac Jones is under center. Nelson Aguilar and Jonnu Smith looked pretty good, and I'm always leaning pretty heavy on that Patriots D. Staying away from Hunter Henry, I just think that Jonnu Smith, as the season goes on, is going to solidify his role as the lead tight end there. And then for the Jets, Corey Davis looked great. Everyone else on the Jets looked pretty mediocre. So far as the running back room for the Jets, they still haven't worked it out yet. I think Michael Carter will take over in the next few weeks, but in the time being, with that committee, I'm just staying away from everyone.
Yeah, so the Jets just also lost their stud left tackle. I'm very happy that I have the Patriots defense in both my leagues because I think they're about to stomp all over Zach Wilson.
Next up, we've got Falcons at Bucks. Over-under is 52 on this one. I'm going to go over. I think that the Falcons won't put up another showing like they did last week, only scoring 6 points against the Eagles. As much as I like the Bucks defense, I think this is going to be a bit of a shootout. And then, like we talked about earlier in the video, these double-digit spreads always scare me. Bucks money line is an easy bet. If you want to win $4. But if I, gun to my head, if I'm betting on the spread, I'd have to stick with the Bucks. I'd avoid it altogether, though. I just don't think it always scares me. 12.5 is a lot. So far as the Falcons, I'm starting Matt Ryan. If you have to, hopefully most people out there have a better option at QB. Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts both had 8 targets last week. I'm going to stick with them, staying away from Gage, Hurst, and Mike Davis. Mike Davis had less than 3 yards a carry, and the Bucks that D line is just vicious. On the Bucs side, I'm starting everyone if you've got them, and I'm not really sitting anybody.
Yeah, the Falcons did look really good, though, for just like 2 drives. And, 12.5 is a huge spread, but I think I'm confidently betting for the Bucs to cover that. I mean, the Eagles just stomped the Falcons, and the Bucs are just ruthless on defense. I cannot see Matt Ryan having any type of success. I know it's a divisional game. This is going to be a bloodbath.
We'll see. Next up, we've got Vikings at Cardinals. Over under is 51. I'm going to take the over on this. Cardinals look like they can score 40 points any game. You and I talked about it earlier. Vikings will be down by 30 and then score 24 out of nowhere. I think it's a pretty easy call for me on this one, taking the Cardinals to cover at 3.5. We saw what they did to the Titans last week. I think that they're going to do something similar to the Vikings. Speaking of the Titans, he kind of reminds me of Kirk Cousins in that efficient kind of play style. Cousins could have 300 yards, but he could also have 3 turnovers like Tannehill did last week. So I'm staying away from him. Definitely staying away from the Vikings defense, doing that all year. Adam Thielen looked great. Justin Jefferson looked great. And Dalvin Cook is going to get, CMC kind of volume. On the Cardinals side of things, no surprises really. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk also looked pretty good. I like Rondell Moore in this one. More so I don't like the Vikings secondary. And I think I'm going to take Chase Edmonds over James Conner. I like Chase's receiving ability more than I trust in Conner's ability to run it up the gut.
I like your bets a lot. I mean, Chandler Jones, 5 sacks against the Titans this past weekend, and Kirk had a lot of pressure in his face against the Bengals. So, yeah, I agree. I'll take the over. I'll take the Cards to cover and to win.
And I'm sitting Hayden Hurst because he does not play for the Cardinals. Next up, we've got Dallas at LAC. This is probably my favorite game of the week. I think it's going to be an absolute shootout. I'm going over for 100 chips on 55.5. As high as that is, I could see this game being 35-30 easily. So far as fantasy-wise, usual suspects: Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott. Staying away from that defense and special teams, mainly because Justin Herbert looked so good last week against the Washington football team. Herbert only ended up, I think, with 13 fantasy points last week, but if you watched the game, you knew that he deserved a lot more than that. Keenan Allen looks great. Mike Williams had his best game that I've seen just from the eye test in about 2 years. Austin Eckler is going to be, drowning in volume. I'm staying away from Justin Jackson. Every game, it looks like Larry Roundtree is improving a little bit. And then that defense and special teams, I think, is going to have a tough day against Dak and the Cowboys.
55.5 points. That was the first thing that stood out to me when I looked at week 2 betting lines. That is quite high, but even if that line moves up, I think you have to take the over. This could be like, in the 30-30 type game.
Definitely.
I can't wait to watch this game, and I hope the Chargers put it on Dallas and they start 0-2. But Dak's going to throw for 500 yards.
Let's go Bolts. Next up, we've got Titans at Seahawks. Over-under is 53.5. It's a little on the high side. I think I'm actually going to go under on that, but pretty comfortable with taking the Seahawks money line. Titans looked terrible against the Cardinals last week, and Seattle is not an easy place to win. So pretty comfortable with that. If you've got Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and A.J. Brown, you're probably starting them. I'm going to advise sitting Julio Jones this week. He's got to earn it. I haven't seen it from Julio yet, and hopefully we see it in the next few weeks. But also sitting the Titans D, I think that's going to be a pretty easy call most weeks, but definitely against the Seahawks. And then starting Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. I might actually look at Will Dissly too.
Yeah, Seahawks were in Carson Wentz's grill all game long this past Sunday. They might have a scary pass rush this year. Taylor Lewan for the Titans was horrible at tackle, letting Chandler Jones just eat up Ryan Tannehill. There's a lot to be worried about for the Titans. I'm also taking the under Seahawks spread and money line here.
Sunday Night Football could be the game of the week for a lot of people. Chiefs at Ravens. Over under on this one is 55.5. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over most of the time with the Chiefs. They can put up 40 points in an instant. I'm also going to have them covering. I only have 50 chips on that, but I'd probably put 200. I think -3 is pretty easy. You and I had talked about it earlier in the video or earlier today, but they were only -4 against the Chiefs and -3 against the Ravens, who just got beat by the Raiders. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Starting for the Chiefs, pretty easy. Mahomes, CEH, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Going to go ahead and sit their D most weeks. So far as the Ravens, we've got Lamar Jackson. Tyson Williams looked really good. I'm sitting Latavius Murray. He did get volume last week. He had 10 carries, but only 28 yards. He did get the score, but touchdown-dependent players like that, I kind of stay away from. Mark Andrews, I think, will have a good day, and I'm really high on Marquis Brown. I think Ravens are going to be playing from behind for most of this game. I could see a 60-yard bomb to him.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard to understand the spread here. Like just three-point favorites for the Chiefs. Ravens lost another starter in guard Tyre Phillips. But the Chiefs seem to always play to the level of their opponent. Like they'll be down by 25, but then they'll come back. But I'm with you. I think the smart play is to go Chiefs cover and win. I'm not really trying to touch that over under, but I think if I had to, I'll go the over. And I think you have to consider Watkins going back to play against the Chiefs.
Last game, Monday Night Football, we have Lions at Packers. Over under on this is 48.5. I think I'm going to go the over on that. I know that the Packers only scored 3 points against the Saints on Sunday, but I think that they're going to be pissed. They're going back home to Lambeau. 48.5 isn't that high, but I do like the Lions to cover. So I have 50 chips on that. 11.5 point spread is a little scary for the Packers. The Lions were down by a significant margin against San Francisco and actually ended up making it an 8-point game. Starting for fantasy-wise, we have TJ Hawkins, Deandre Swift, and Jamal Williams. Those three combined for 30 targets, and the other, I think, 9 receivers on the Lions that got targets combined for 27. I'm sitting Jared Goff. If I had to, and in 2 QB leagues, I'd probably start him. That Packers D is terrible. They just got shredded by the Saints. But in standard leagues or in just 1 QB leagues, I'm probably staying away from him. And then a lot of the usual suspects for Green Bay: Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Robert Tonyan, and Devonte Adams. AJ Dillon, I don't think will get much this game, although he could if they're just trying to kill clock late in the game. And then, like we talked about earlier, that defense for the Packers is terrible. I am for sure staying away from them.
I don't know if I ever want to bet on another Monday night game again after what just happened in Las Vegas. Definitely taking the over here. Lions offense really was able to turn it on against San Francisco. Packers will be, ready to get their first win back in Lambeau, like you said. So heavily going over, and 11.5 spread. I think you have to take Lions to cover. Even if they're getting blown out, I mean, they've shown the ability to put a lot of points on the board. Goff looks, like he's got a connection with some of these guys. I think they just lost Tyrell Williams, who looked like their number 1 receiver to a concussion. But they still got TJ Hawkinson, and they still got my man Quintez Cephas.
Never bet against Quintez Cephas. It's the motto of this podcast.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram. That's @FantasyFB and Bets. We'll help you out with your fantasy rosters as well as weekly betting lines. Feel free to send us your weekly wagers, any big wins, bad beats. Remember, we had a 63% hit rate in week 1. You just can't beat that. So let's get this bread.